Ron Dermer was born and raised in Miami Beach, Florida. He earned a degree in finance and management from the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania, and a degree in philosophy, politics, and economics, PPE, from Oxford University. For 3 years, he was a columnist for the Jerusalem Post. In 2004, Ron co-authored a best-selling book, The Case for Democracy, with Natan Sharansky, which has been translated into 10 languages. From 2005 to 2008, Ron served as Israel's Minister of Economic Affairs in the United States. From 2009 to 2013, he served as Senior Advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Ron Dermer stands proudly representing the State of Israel and is a voice of justice and clarity to the world. Please welcome Israel's Ambassador to the United States, Ron Dermer.
Thank you. I was pleased to see that no one interviewed my former rabbis for that video. I appreciate that very much. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, had I told my friends many years ago growing up that one day I would be Israel's ambassador to the United States, they wouldn't have been impressed. But if I would have told them that I'd be an event where Joe Piscopo would have been the MC, then they would have been impressed. Joe, I want to thank you for your support for Israel and your support for the Jewish people. We're an old people who remember our friends, and we will remember your friendship for a very long time. I'm honored to accept this doctorate with my fellow honorees, Philip Selinger, and also with Charles and Sarah. You two represent the indomitable will of the Jewish people. And I know that many people are concerned today with the rising tide of anti-Semitism that you see around the world. But you both know that we've been through worse. And the difference today from then is not that they've stopped hating the Jews, it's that the Jews now have the power to defend themselves. And when Israel says never again, Israel means never again. I also want to thank Senator Menendez, who I know was unable to be here tonight. You know, the greatest American president, President Lincoln, once said that any man can face adversity, but if you really want to test a man's character, give him power. I think President Lincoln would have said that Senator Menendez has passed his test with flying colors. And on behalf of the government and people of Israel, I want to thank him for his moral clarity and for his leadership, in particular for his leadership in confronting Iran over its nuclear weapons program, which represents not only an existential threat to Israel, but a grave threat to the peace and security of the world. And Israel strongly supports Senator Menendez's efforts to increase sanctions, and we hope that all his colleagues in the Senate will join him and follow his leadership. So thank you very much. Now, unfortunately, my wife Rhoda couldn't be here with me tonight. She's taking care of our 5 kids back in Washington. I say it's unfortunate because I was hoping I could borrow a little of her yichus here tonight. You see, I went to the Hebrew Academy of Miami Beach. It's called HAM in the local lingo. But Rhoda studied at Beis Yaakov of Baltimore, and because of that, before every speech, Rabbi, she reminds me to include some Torah in my remarks so that the event doesn't turn into a Moshav Leitzin. Right? So you see, you can take the girl out of Beis Yaakov, but you can never take Beis Yaakov out of the girl. This is the first honorary degree that I've received, but I can't think of one that would be more meaningful to me. First, because while the Jewish people value all Torah, all knowledge, I should say. We value knowledge of Torah above all. And if I can't be a rabbi, I suppose the next best thing is to get a degree from a rabbinical college. The second reason is because the Chabad movement is a movement for which I have the utmost respect and admiration. My relationship with Chabad is both personal and ideological. I've been following Chabad my whole life, from reading those Tzivas Hashem newsletters as a child to learning some Tanya as an adult. And while I've never had the privilege of meeting the Rebbe, I've heard enough and learned enough about him to understand what a towering giant of the Jewish people he was. And over the years, I have developed strong friendships with Chabad rabbis. I see Rabbi Shem Tov here tonight and his son in Washington. Ephraim Levine, where is Ephraim? I saw him earlier today. Stand up a second. Ephraim Levine and Menachem Schmidt were the Chabad rabbis when I studied at the University of Pennsylvania. My good friend Shmuley Boteach was the Chabad rabbi when I studied at Oxford, and I was the president of his prestigious L'chaim Society, a distinction that I share with your other senator of New Jersey, Cory Booker, who I understand also has an honorary degree. And after I moved to Israel, I became a strong supporter of Rav Steinsaltz, who my wife and I entrusted with the most precious thing of all, the education of our children. And they learn at his school in Jerusalem. And today my family davens at the Chabad of Bethesda in a small shtibel led by a wonderful rabbi, Sender Gaisinski, if any of you know him, whose impact on Jewish life in Washington is sure to grow in strength from year to year. But my admiration for Chabad is not simply a function of the remarkable rabbis I have encountered over the course of my life. It's a function of the remarkable mission those rabbis and thousands like them have undertaken. The Jewish people are a people on a mission, and Chabad is a movement on a mission. And it is the mission of the Jewish people and the mission of Chabad and the mission of the Jewish state that I want to speak about tonight. Many Jews today believe that the mission of the Jewish people is tikkun olam, to repair the world. Now, repairing the world is an inspiring idea, and the sentence that begins, "I am repairing the world," has an infinite number of endings. I can repair the world by helping the poor, by healing the sick, or by pursuing countless other worthy goals. And driven by a powerful desire to repair the world, Jews throughout the ages have been found disproportionately among movements that have sought to advance those goals. Look at the disproportionate number of Jews who joined the union movement to ensure better work and safety conditions at the beginning of the last century, or who mobilized during the American Civil Rights Movement to ensure that black Americans would be treated equally, both in law and in practice, and who are today leading the fight against poverty, the race to cure cancer, or who are engaged in so many other noble endeavors. And look at the high percentage of Jews who are on the list of the biggest philanthropists in America. Jews who contribute not just to Jewish causes, but to wider causes, making generous donations to hospitals, to universities, to cultural institutions throughout America. The old joke says 2 Jews, 3 opinions. But it could just as easily be 2 Jews, 3 social causes. That is no accident. It is a product of a powerful desire, I would argue a messianic desire, to improve our world. And that desire is firmly rooted in the traditions of the Jewish people. The single most important philosophical statement ever written about social justice is the Torah's statement that all human beings are created in the image of God. That belief has profound consequences, both for our conduct of our own lives, but also for how we treat our fellow man, Jews and non-Jews alike. When I saw ISIS behead those journalists, the first thing that entered my mind was the utter defiance of that sacred principle that man is created in God's image. To do evil to one's fellow man is first and foremost to defy God. But the Torah's moral message goes well beyond this basic proposition of human equality and dignity. It was the Torah that first demanded that we provide for the poor, that we care for the widow and the orphan, and that we embrace the stranger who lives among us. And the powerful vision of universal peace, of nations learning no more war, of beating their swords into plowshares, a vision that today is boldly engraved on the walls of the United Nations, was not plucked from a speech of a UN Secretary General. It was preached by the prophet Isaiah some 2,700 years ago. So the values that are embodied in the idea of Tikkun Olam, of repairing the world, are firmly rooted in Jewish tradition. But while Tikkun Olam is a worthy goal to be pursued by Jews and non-Jews alike, it is not the mission of the Jewish people. It is a consequence of the Jewish people fulfilling their mission. The mission of the Jewish people, and Rabbi, you can correct me, was laid out clearly in the book of Shemot. Ve'ata im shamoa tishme'u b'koli u'shmartem et briti v'ayitem li sigula mikol ha'amim ki li kol ha'aretz v'atem tiyu li mamlechet kohanim ve'goy kadosh. Our mission is to keep a particular covenant, a covenant initially forged with our forefathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and ultimately codified for our people by Moses at Sinai. And I'm pretty sure he did it without an 11-year-old boy by his side. You haven't seen the movie yet. I gave it away. Charlton Heston was better. Now, if the mission of the Jewish people is to keep this covenant, then the Rabbinical Council of America truly is, as Senator Lieberman once described it, the West Point of Judaism. Because Chabad rabbis are soldiers in that mission, strengthening that covenant, strengthening Jewish identity one mitzvah at a time. And Chabad rabbis are not just any soldiers, they're Marines. The Marines went from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. Chabad rabbis conduct seders in the mountains of Nepal and build sukkahs in the deserts of Arizona. Marines are armed with tanks and guns. Chabad rabbis bear sets of tefillin and boxes of matzah. And Marines are usually the first ones sent into areas where the enemy is strongest. Chabad rabbis are often the only ones sent into areas where Jewish identity is weakest. Still, there are a few differences. To the best of my knowledge, Marines do not need to raise their budgets from the locals. And the Marines' families do not have to resettle with them in some far-flung part of the world. And here's one other important difference. Marines are sent on many missions. Chabad rabbis are all sent on one mission: to strengthen Jewish identity and to ensure that the sparks of our people, scattered across the world, do not burn out. Across 7 continents, scores of cities, and thousands of communities, they carefully nurture those sparks. By opening their hearts and homes to every Jew, Chabad provides them with the oxygen of our faith and our tradition. Through a Shabbat meal, a short learning session, or a Jewish holiday celebration, Chabad enables those sparks to glow a bit stronger and protects them from the powerful winds of assimilation that could easily blow them out. That is the mission of Chabad. And because thousands of Chabad rabbis have accepted that mission over the past few decades, and because people like you have generously supported that mission, the flame of our people grows stronger as Jewish communities are revitalized from Melbourne to Miami to Moscow. Ladies and gentlemen, if the mission of Chabad is to strengthen Jewish identity, then the holiday that best represents that mission is the holiday of Hanukkah, which is a celebration of Jewish identity. It is said that all holidays boil down to the same simple message. They tried to kill us, they failed, let's eat. And I suppose you could say that all Jewish holidays are in one form or another a celebration of Jewish identity that has persevered. But each Jewish holiday not only has unique foods and unique customs, they also each celebrate a unique national experience. On Passover, we celebrate our freedom from bondage. On Shavuot, we remember the giving of the Torah. On Sukkot, we remember our life in the desert. On Purim, we celebrate the foiling of a plot to annihilate us. On Hanukkah, we celebrate our identity. We celebrate how a band of brothers led a small nation to defeat a powerful empire, not to save their lives or to end their enslavement, but to live according to their laws and traditions. You see, the Maccabees risked their lives for the sake of their identity. That is why it is fitting that on Hanukkah, we are instructed to make our celebration public. Your Passover Seder can be conducted at home. Your sukkah can be placed in an inner courtyard. But on Hanukkah, you have to light the menorah in a place where your neighbors, Jews and non-Jews, can see. In essence, on Hanukkah, we are instructed to do what the Maccabees themselves did some 2,200 years ago. We are instructed to be proud of our faith and our heritage. We are instructed to be proud Jews. That is why it's probably no surprise that when many people think of Chabad, the first thing that enters their mind is an image of a gigantic menorah. Now, tomorrow night I will watch Washington, D.C.'s remarkable Rabbi Shem Tov light a massive menorah outside the White House with a vice president there. And this week, Chabad rabbis will be lighting giant menorahs in public squares across this great country and around the world. It is fitting that we associate Chabad with Hanukkah because, as I have learned over my lifetime, Chabad rabbis are many things. They are welcoming, they are open-minded, they are compassionate, they are dedicated, but above all else, Chabad rabbis are proud. And year after year, they proudly light those giant menorahs and spread that message of Jewish pride far and wide. But this year, let's remember that we are celebrating something else on Hanukkah besides Jewish identity. We also celebrate Jewish sovereignty. Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel. In fact, Hanukkah is the only Jewish holiday that commemorates an event that took place in the land of Israel. You know when I first found that out? First time I played dreidel in Israel. It landed on a pay, and I thought I got a bum dreidel. Because I grew up in Miami Beach, Florida, and there was a shin. Nes Gadol Haya Sham. A great miracle was there. But in Israel, there's no shin. There's a pay. Nes Gadol Haya Po. A great miracle was here in the land of Israel. On Hanukkah, we celebrate the miracle of the restoration of our national sovereignty. Ladies and gentlemen, the Maccabees understood that identity and sovereignty had to go hand in hand. They understood that Jewish identity alone is a home without walls, placing its occupants at the mercy of a storm that would not be long in coming. And history, unfortunately, has proven them right. Jewish identity was very strong in medieval Spain and in modern Poland. But that did not prevent our expulsion from Spain, and it didn't save us from the death camps of Auschwitz. Everywhere Jews went, everywhere we laid down roots, sooner or later, we were subjected to persecutions and massacres, blood libels, and pogroms. That is not the lesson that the Jewish people learned from the 20th century. That is the lesson that the Jewish people learned from 20 centuries. And that is why the establishment of the State of Israel was such a profound transformation in the life of the Jewish people. We moved from powerlessness to power, from statelessness to sovereignty, from having to beg others to defend us to being able to defend ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, the mission of the Jewish state is to defend the Jewish people and to secure the Jewish future. And that is what Israel has done since the day it was established, by fighting against enemies bent on our destruction, by welcoming millions of Jewish immigrants from across the world, and by building a modern, thriving Jewish state that has become both a marvel of innovation and technology, but is also a place where more Jews learn Torah than at any time in our history. Today, Israel faces great challenges. We must continue to defend our people against threats to our security. We must continue to stand up to this rising tide of anti-Semitism. We must continue to raise the alarm against the bad agreement with the Ayatollahs of Iran that would leave the world's most dangerous regime close to developing the world's most dangerous weapons. And we must continue to oppose one-sided diplomatic initiatives against Israel at the United Nations that would endanger Israel's security by giving the Palestinians a state to continue the conflict, not end it. But as we face the formidable challenges ahead, let's remember that sovereignty, Jewish sovereignty, was never easy, and that sovereignty was never given to our people by the goodwill of others. We had to fight for it. That was true when Joshua led our people across the Jordan. It was true when Matisyahu and his sons rose up against the Greeks in Modi'in. And it was true in 1948 when a newborn Israel was forced to fight off 5 invading Arab armies. Contrary to what some people believe, the UN did not establish the State of Israel. Had Israel lost its war of independence, then that 1947 partition resolution would have been nothing more than a worthless piece of paper gathering dust in a New York building. What made the promise of our sovereignty real has always been the faith and courage of the soldiers of Israel and the people of Israel, who have been prepared to defend that sovereignty. That was as true 3,000 years ago as it is today. Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow night we will light a candle to celebrate Jewish identity and Jewish sovereignty. The Rebbe sent his followers around the world to strengthen Jewish identity, to ensure that the sparks of our people would continue to burn bright. But he knew, as well as we all do, that the flame of our people burns brightest in the land of our forefathers, the land of Israel. So on this Hanukkah, when you light the menorah, stand proud. Proud to celebrate the heritage that the Maccabees safeguarded against impossible odds. And proud to be living at a time when, like the Maccabees, we have the privilege to be a sovereign people in the one and only Jewish state. Thank you.